The place is Old California. The time is betwixt the era of total Spanish dominion and the rumbling independence of a young Mexico. Spain grips a California that wishes desperately to be free from its bonds, and its response is to squeeze all the harder. The missionaries are ransacked, the natives are enslaved, and the streets are filled with police and soldiers, and the caballeros, despite youth and fire, are idle in the midst of great oppression. These are the days of hardship. But lurking in the darkness is a man who heeds not king nor law. His strength is in the power of his people, and the end of the blade lies the path of justice. These are the days of the fox so cunning and free. For over a century, we've seen his exploits, and now we behold his beginnings. We see the mark of Zorro. Zorro was the genesis of many of pulpdom's tropes. Although predated by the Baroness, Orczy, Scarlet, Pimpernel, we can largely thank Zorro's creator, Johnston McCulley, for the standard marks of the dual identity hero in pulp, comic books, and of course, men's action. McCulley, a reporter and army veteran of the Great War, wrote The Curse of Capistrano in 1919 for All Story Weekly, the sister magazine of the original pulp, Argosy. Zorro wasn't McCulley's first big hit, though, as he had created Gentleman Thief, Black Star, and Robin Hood-esque champion, the Crimson Clown, for rival publisher Street and Smith. But Zorro is what endures. The Curse of Capistrano had a fan in the King of Hollywood, Douglas Fairbanks, who adapted it to the silver screen the next year as the mark of Zorro. And the rest, as they say, is history. Just about every decade we've got a new Zorro. From Tyrone Power, to Guy Williams, to Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas. So what kind of tale launches a legend? Well, one that's a little all over the place historically. This edition, bearing the name of the film as later editions of the story tend to, goes into the weird melding of the periods that McCulley constructs. The dynamics of power, both personal and political, along with the landscape that's presented to us, is a collapsing and melding of about 60-odd years of change and history between the 1780s and the 1840s. A period which had California shaking off Spanish rule and becoming a part of Mexico in 1821. While all the dynamics both socially and politically that are shown did in fact happen, they didn't all exist in the same time as is presented here. The outside political forces on California at the time are absent to a point that Abraham Hoffman once wrote that the story might as well take place on Mars. The essay in this edition is great stuff, as a supplementary text and a history lesson. It helps shed a bit of light on the period. Does any of this actually affect the text and how it's presented? Absolutely not. The world of Zorro and Old California may not be a picture plucked from history, but it is painted in colors so vivid we instantly believe. The Pueblo of Los Angeles is filled with shops, taverns, lush villas, dank prisons, and countryside dotted with opulent manors and missions, all of which is consistently terrorized by military men like Sergeant Pedro Gonzalez, whose greed and violence is allowed by the blind eyes of Captain Juan Ramon. In the novel's opening, Gonzalez drinks heavily, talking about the bandit that people call Zorro. I know I have led an evil life, but I only ask of the saints one thing now, that they forgive me my sins long enough to grant me the boon of standing face to face with this pretty highwayman. In the midst of his boasting, in wanders Don Diego Vega, the name expanded to De La Vega in later stories. Diego is known for his small interest in just about everything. Diego, characteristically, shows little interest in Zorro, stating, "Let us not speak of him. Shall it be that I never hear of anything except deeds of bloodshed and violence? Would it be possible in these turbulent times for a man to listen to words of wisdom regarding music or the poets?" So everyone these days knows the score. Diego is in fact Zorro. The dual identity of the character is baked into pop culture. However, the novel doesn't reveal this until the very end, the opening chapters providing great contrast between the two characters. Diego is a classic fop and dandy, with later chapters having him constantly complaining about the heat, riding conditions, and his general fatigue. His nerves are always frayed, and he abhors hearing about any violence. Our leading lady, the young and beautiful Senorita Lolita Pulido, is disgusted by his lack of passion or want to court and woo her when he seeks her hand in marriage. Don Diego Vega, you are of a noble family and have much wealth and will inherit more, but you are lifeless, senor. Is this your idea of courtship and romance? Can you not take the trouble to ride 4 miles on a smooth road to see the maiden you would wed? What sort of blood is in your veins, senor? Diego, despite his firm wrist, deep eye, and good blood, as they put it, is generally seen as a waste and layabout. When Diego leaves the bar, however, his opposite number blows in with the raging storm, Zorro soon darkening its doorway. 4 days ago, senor, you brutally beat a native who had won your dislike. The affair happened on the road between here and the mission at San Gabriel. He was a surly dog and got in my way. And how does it concern you, my pretty highwayman? I am a friend of the oppressed, senor, and I have come to punish you. Zorro zigs in every way that Diego zags. Full of fire, wit, zeal, and athleticism, he fights like 10 men, dueling Gonzalez and later multiple simultaneous opponents with a smile and a laugh. He had been watching his antagonist's eyes, of course, and now he saw a change. They seemed to be laughing through the mask, and now they had narrowed and seemed to send forth flakes of fire. We have had enough playing. It is time for punishment! And suddenly he began to press the fighting, taking step after step, slowly and methodically going forward and forcing Gonzalez backwards. The tip of his blade seemed to be a serpent's head with 1,000 tongues. Gonzalez felt himself at the other's mercy. He was ready to swallow his pride and call upon the corporal and soldiers to rush in and give him aid. And Lolita, after a tense standoff followed by ample flirting, remarks, "A thief, yet a man. If Don Diego had only as much dash and courage." So we see the template that would be emulated over and over again in the decades to come. The wealthy man about town who isn't all that interesting while hiding a grander identity can be seen in Walter Gibson's Lamont Cranston, Norval Page's Richard Wentworth, Lee Falk's Kit Walker, Fran Stryker's Britt Reed, and of course, Kanan Finger's Bruce Wayne. Later stories would include secret lairs with hidden passageways, signature weapons, and allies of all shapes and sizes. In Zorro, we see the start of an American heroic tradition. Of course, until the end of the novel, these two are separate men. This creates an interesting dynamic where Captain Ramon, young, handsome, and possessing rank like Diego, also takes an interest in Lolita. So now we have a strange love square, where Lolita doesn't like Diego, but her family wants her to marry him because of his influence. Ramon is better than Diego, Lolita admiring his bravado and good looks, but doesn't see any love in him. But what she really wants is Zorro, with his zeal and passion. But she, of course, can't marry an outlaw. If Don Diego Vega were more like the highwayman, if some man appeared who combined Vega's wealth with the rogue's spirit and dash and courage. Ramon's tendency to take what he wants results in a foiled assault on Lolita, followed by a letter to the governor about how their family may no longer be loyal to Spain. This, combined with an increased military presence leading to increased pressure on the populace, brings Zorro out in even greater force. But ultimately, the sway lies with the Caballeros, the sons of the rich and powerful of California. Will their blades back the law and order of Ramon and strike down the outlaw that curses Capistrano, or will they join Zorro's band, laughing in the face of oppression, perhaps at the cost of their own lives? The appeal of Zorro, I feel, is threefold. First in setting, second in character, and third in message. The time period that the story is set in has a lot of old-world elements, with powerful families, talks of honor and process, and the classical concept of the gentleman, one of influence and poise befitting his rank in society, is still alive and well. But it also has many New World elements, the desolate landscapes, the diverse populace and multicultural scope of a colonial land, the rugged individualism, and the square focus on liberty over traditional rule. It takes all the fun of a swashbuckling adventure of Robin Hood or the Three Musketeers and puts it into a Western setting, the lone mysterious fighter against impeccable odds. It's a blend of genre I feel that people can really sink their teeth into, and they have. It also allows for extra trappings of each genre, with adaptations like The Mask of Zorro bringing in ample amounts of Spanish influence, along with the presence of the American West in characters like Captain Love, who, by the way, was a real guy who actually did the stuff you saw in the movie. Your reminder that the romantic John Wayne view of the West absolutely existed in places. But so did the Cormac McCarthy view. The characters also shine. Obviously, Zorro and Diego is a concept that's been emulated time and time again, but the rivalry between Zorro and Ramon provides a dark mirror image of the handsome, skilled man of power, one who uses his power to give, the other to take. There's also great use of comedy with Sergeant Gonzalez, the romance and fire of Lolita, the almost Jane Austen-esque pressures of family expectations coming from Lolita and Diego's parents. It all creates an ebb and flow of tones that can go from funny to shocking to mysterious to exciting, all the way back to funny without breaking stride. These aren't very complex characters, but they make the setting feel alive. Finally, I think McCulley places Zorro in a time rather unlike the many characters that followed in his path. The Shadow, the Phantom, Batman, and others are men keeping the laws that are already in place. Despite the chaos around them, they aim to return things to a status quo when things were otherwise peaceful. When they're placed in a position that they directly oppose the powers that be it the police, the government, or their own populace, it's a big deal, and usually a bit of an event. But that's just Zorro's world. He's a champion amidst a beaten-down civilization, one terrorized not by outsiders or bringers of chaos, but by the crushing boot of twisted order, brought about by greedy and petty men. The spiritual father of Zorro is Robin of Locksley. I think there's something that people respond to in those stories. In a just society, the man who backs the powers that be is just. But in a corrupt society, the man against the grain is the hero. I suppose it all depends on where you're standing and the times you're in. Whether protecting freedom, liberty, and justice from the top or from the bottom, we'll always need protectors. And we can pray they're men like Zorro, who laugh in the face of danger and stand tall for the innocent. And we can further pray that we can have the strength to stand fearlessly beside them. Listen, if you guys aren't sold on this character and why you should sink your teeth into his stories, then I don't know how else to convince you. Today's story is well within the public domain if you care for digital readings, and copies in print aren't too tough to find. There are large and gorgeous releases of all of McCulley's Zorro stories that are out there for the at-home readers, and plenty of paperbacks for those on the go. I'd also recommend the later reimagining by Chilean author Isabel Allende. Though not traditional action, it's still a great read. If you want something on screen, go nuts. We got TV shows, cartoons, movies, serials. Have a ball. There's also a few video games. That's all I have to say about that. At around 250 pages with a breezy writing style, this inaugural story is a lovely summer weekend companion. You won't be disappointed. Next time, we've been talking the origins of heroes in the medium. So let's peek into the shadows a little bit with their opposite number. We bring on the bad guys with the original gentleman thief, Arsène Lupin. In the meantime, show him some guts.